Morning, 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 or afternoon,
We're
depending on
live.
where you are. Yes, hello, we are live, I hope. I hope we're being heard, because last time I was on this, it kind of all went wrong for the first 20 minutes. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Today, now, we're going to talk about location, location, location. Oh, I'm getting picked up sound from somewhere else. 1 second. Sorry, my YouTube was. I was hearing myself. That was very, very weird. So
Yep,
we are
that's
live, and
jolly weird.
I can confirm that the audio is working. Technology, I love it. Hi. Okay, so yes, we're going to do location, location, location. I've renamed it to a British TV program. So yes, we're going to look at creepy locations, crafting locations, and all the fun haunted places in the world. So I will be the moderator for today. I'm David, pronouns he, they. And I am going to let everybody introduce themselves because I'm not the important one. We will start with, on my screen, we have Ahimsa. Do you want to go first?
Hello, everybody. I'm Ahimsa. Since this panel is called Location, 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 my location is South Korea. It's actually 1 in the morning here, so we have quite a span of things. And so if you want to find my stuff, I've got a bunch of novels on Amazon. My newest one is about some robbers who go to hide their bank money in the forest and run afoul of Bigfoot, and also published through Night Owl Publishing a bunch of old school things. So you can find that on DriveThru or Night Owl Publishing.
Cool. Next on my screen is Stephen.
Hi, folks. I'm Stephen Wall. I am a folklore PhD, and I am responsible for the Delapore Media blog and publishing imprint. Mainly, I work in Cult and Call of Cthulhu, but I'm expanding my horizons here and looking forward to chatting with you. I do have a product coming out soon, so I'm going to wave this in front of the camera. This is Somebody Think of the Children, a product for a scenario for the Miskatonic repository for Call of Cthulhu, where you play mothers in the 1990s trying to save local teenagers from devil worship.
You mean playing D&D?
I'm not going to spoil it or anything, but
when you first mentioned this on the occult panel, my brain instantly went Call of Cthulhu. There's Delta Green. It's not God's teeth for Call of Cthulhu, is it? Because that would be not pleasant.
No. This is a little love story to vampire role playing in the 1990s, which is what got me started in all of this. But enough
keep the
about me,
vampire
let's hear
thing.
about
Yeah,
other people.
keep the vampire thing in mind because that might be a question later. Next up on my screen, Nathan.
Right. Hi, I'm Nathan. He, him, and location-wise, Wisconsin. You'll hear it come through every once in a while. I'm a co-host on the RPG Reanimators podcast, where we discuss horror scenarios, horror systems. We have actual plays of a bajillion different systems. Hopefully, Vaesen soon, if we can get to it. And I'm also frequently on Into the Darkness, which Tom puts out a bajillion videos of, so I'm in some of them.
Excellent. And my co-conspirator, last but not least, Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom Moore. I am one of the writers behind Modern Vaesen and other community content for Vaesen. And I'm also a professional GM over at startplaying.games. And I am also a translator for RPG books, and my most recent work will be out in October, which is Black Chrome for Cyberpunk Red, which I translated from English into German. So very excited for that.
So if you want Cyberpunk Red even more complicatedly written, you can now read it in German.
I kept it very much in tone and at the same level of complexity, if not a little bit lower, because sentences.
Because German sentence structure. Yes. Excellent. Nice. Cool. Happy to have you all here. I think this is going to be great fun. We've got people from different views on life in different parts of the world. So I think seeing how you all view creepy is going to be good fun. If we're going to talk about locations, yes, I'm in Mexico, so we're in different places all over the world. So
Germany.
this is fun. Germany, yeah, cool. Right,
I didn't mention any Newfoundland.
Where are you?
Newfoundland, yeah.
Island on the east coast of Canada.
You hang on. How did you say that?
Newfoundland.
Just
is
a
how the locals
Newfoundland.
say it. No,
Newfoundland. I thought
Newfoundland.
it was Newfoundland. Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
I was getting a bit
the
confused there.
locals say it Newfoundland.
Yeah, it's not found.
Yeah.
A warning to everybody here and to all those listening. Tom knows this quite well. I go down sidetracks. I get tangent very, very easily. So I'm moderating myself as much as I'm trying to moderate you. This is a new experience for me. But first of all, we're doing locations today. Locations are quite important in RPGs. If we didn't exist in a world in an RPG, then how do you play a game? But Vesen is loosely based in the real world. So, what are some creepy locations or haunted locations? What are your favorite places in the world that you think are creepy? It doesn't have to be haunted. It can be creepy. It can be haunted, as I say, or it can just kind of just have a weird vibe about it. So let's kind of start off setting a scene. What do you think is a creepy location? What's a really cool creepy location? We'll go in the opposite way to what we just went. So Tom, what is a creepy location for you in the real world? What's your favorite?
My
weird
favorite
place?
weird place is actually in Germany, in Berlin. It's called the Spreepark, which is an amusement park that had its roots back in the GDR and closed down in the very early 2000s. And then it was just left to rot away. And sadly, it's getting reopened and reconstructed and stuff since 5 years, but there are some amazing lost place photo shootings and pictures out there, and it's just an incredible place, an amusement park reconquered by nature. And it also has a very hilariously silly story of the owners who at some point after shutting down the park actually left with some of the rights to South America and got incarcerated over there because they smuggled tons of heroin. And it's just a mad story. It's a brilliant place and actually a setting for another game that I love to run, but it's the first thing that comes to mind if I need to talk about.
Yeah, I think we mentioned what was it, Circus and Carnival in the occult thing as well as like places that can be a bit weird and you can twist them. So yeah, cool. Yeah, creepy abandoned theme parks are definitely. Right, cool. Next up, Nathan, what's your favorite real life creepy place?
Yeah, I like abandoned institutional buildings, places that should have been busy, especially at night, where, they have the long hallways, they have creaky noises, and they're places generally you don't want to be. Just even when they're populated, it's not usually fun to be at like a asylum or a prison or the DMV, whatever it may be. It's uncomfortable at the best of times.
I now really want to see a creepy DMV scenario. Walk into an abandoned DMV and there's just a lady with paperwork sat at the desk for you.
You need to go to the other line. No.
Take this paperwork to the other line. It needs signing. Yeah, cool. Stephen.
I'm going to take a different tack here, and I'm going to take sea caves for 500, Dave. Recently, I was in Cornwall, and I got the opportunity to see a couple of incredible sea caves. And I think the wildest thing about these is that they're not always available to human beings. There is usually once or twice a day where they are flooded, they are inaccessible. Other
Yep.
things they belong to other things. They belong to a completely different world. And you have eerie reminders of that world when you do get a chance to visit them. You'll hear the water dripping from where the sea cave has previously flooded. You will
Yep.
smell the brine and the rotting seaweed and any number of other things that have been left behind there. And it's just it's a
They
space that
have a
isn't.
vibe. Yeah.
They do, and it's a space that isn't always ours. And if you are there at the wrong time, you're very likely dead.
Yeah.
I mean, they
The
have
the the
names like Hell's Mouth for a reason. Because I mean, if you're there when the water is there, it will kill you.
Yep. So there's within Cornwall itself, a lot of these caves also are kind of collapsed tin mines. So Cornwall is very, very well known for its tin mines. When they all left, I discovered that they actually all got all the miners got moved to Morelia, where I live in Mexico, and they started mining here instead. So that's how football came
Yeah,
to
I
this
know a lot of
Mexico. But
guys that
there's
left
also
Australia as well. But yeah,
yeah.
no, that Cornwall is an interesting place. I'm excited to talk about it. Honestly, it's what's on my mind at the moment.
Yeah, there's a quick thing as well. There's a cave in Kent. I think it's in Kent. It's either in Kent or Essex. It's known as the Seashell Cave, and it's an old cave that nobody knows where it came from. Nobody knows who created it. Where someone has made this proper cave system and put seashells, millions of seashells into the wall and decorated it, which could be a really good, weird, creepy setting. Can't remember whether it's in Kent or Essex, but that's instantly where my mind went. Cool. And Ahimsa.
Yeah, on caves, by the way, the legend of Shawnee Bean, right? The Scottish cannibal, and like the water would
Yep.
come up and hide his cave so people couldn't find him. Yeah, that's cool. We'll probably say liminal a lot today, right? And those sea caves are definitely there. But
If you want
I
to
think
read
for
about
me,
liminal,
right?
Tom.
I
Yeah.
think it's a good list so far. The only thing I can add is in Rajasthan, I went to the Temple of the Rats, and you have to like take off your shoes and walk through, and there's just kind of like rats running all around. And I'm not particularly afraid of rats, but when they're running over your feet, you do feel it's a little visceral, you know?
Yeah.
So probably the creepiest place I've been, other than, your cemeteries are the obvious choices.
Yeah. I think that's actually an interesting thing, and I can't remember where I put this in there, but there's a question about what is creepy, and you've hit on a thing there that the visceral nature can make it creepy. It doesn't have to be haunted. It doesn't have to be ghosts and things. So, but I think I've put that somewhere later in the chat, so we can come back to that. I will not go off on a tangent just yet. Cool. Okay, so we've got a few locations here. We've talked about some real stuff. So, but why do we think location is important? We'll do this one quickly. I've got some more fun things in this. So why are locations important in RPGs? What makes them useful, so to speak? Obviously, we can't do a game without them, as I've said, but why are they so important? And we'll start this time, I think, with Nathan.
A location is gonna reinforce whatever you have in it. So if you have a ghost that is in a bright, sunny day and they're, eating a lollipop, it's not really as frightening as if you're alone in a place you're not supposed to be. So it really highlights, I think, the core of whatever your creature is in the case of Vaesen.
Yeah. We'll go with Ahimsa.
As writers, one thing that like early writers struggle with is something called white room syndrome. So it's just kind of characters talking and there's no context. And I think as game masters, that's something to keep in mind too. Like we don't want people or things just to exist, right? They are part of their surroundings. Kind of what Nathan was saying, but I do think just keep in mind that the setting does grounds the themes, it grounds the plot, like it is essential. And also keep in mind, I think setting its place and its time, right? So
Yeah.
there's kind of two factors there that you can kind of play around with.
Stephen, thoughts?
Location is a character. It is, and I think I'm probably saying much of what Ahimsa has already said, but I think that location fills in a lot of the blank spaces that we might not immediately deal with. You can't give your players exact reality when you're describing. I mean, this is why I kind of like using the word verisimilitude with RPGs, is because you're not giving them exact reality, you're giving them an impression of reality. And so knowing the location and having some details on that location allows the brain to fill in the gaps that you don't have time to fill in.
Yeah. Cool. Tom, any final thoughts on why locations are important?
On why, I don't think. Just what does make a location for an RPG a good location? So more going into a definition or the tasks that a location could take. And I think a location in the ideal form would first have a past. It's not just cut out in this moment, but it has a past and it has a story to tell. And you can use a location to reinforce a theme, a mood, a topic, or you can use it to contrast a conflict. Like, this moment or this fight is important if people are fighting on the edge of a volcano. To overpaint the picture a little bit, but you can emphasize on themes and stuff like this by choosing a location. And I think these are things that are important to all kind of media if you have a location. But what is a little bit extra in an RPG is that it always should include something the player characters can interact with. You get often a very long silence if you describe a beautiful scene of the characters walking through a piece of forest. But if you leave it there, it's just okay. People confused about what they can do unless they are like people who just want to talk. If they don't, they need some incentive to be active, and that's something I think needs to be baked in almost all locations.
On that note, I know me and Tom have had these conversations before. Something very specific happens in Vaesen, and this is the traveling. You start off usually within the society headquarters of whether it's going to be Cass and Gyllenhaal or the Rose House in the 2 books that are released, or wherever your game is set. You then do some research and then you travel to the location. The main location. But you have this travel section. Sometimes it's just written as a monologue in the scenarios. Sometimes people use it as a tool. I know me and Tom have had conversations about whether things should happen in this in some of our writings that we've done together. So I'm going to go off topic, and already going off topic off my planned questions. The travel, the journey between the society and wherever you're going, does that need to have interactions in it? So I'm going to let Tom have the last thought on this because I think I know what Tom's thoughts are going to be. Stephen, I don't know how much you've played Vaesen and understand the concept, but
no, I follow what you're
got
saying.
it. Yeah.
And I mean, definitely I've played other games that involve kind of travel as well. So I mean, this is a familiar topic, and it is definitely one that's come up before. And I would say that this is very much an at the table decision, I think.
Yeah.
I think this is, I mean, I would say, I mean, if you're writing a scenario, you want something to be published, I mean, sure, add an opportunity to have travel described and have interactions, maybe I would say encourage players to perhaps interact with each other, get to know their characters a little bit on a train journey, a journey by stagecoach, whatever happens. I mean, again, you can add some of those location and temporal factors in there as well. But ultimately, I would say like it's where you're at with your table at the moment. I mean, if you are a group of people who are, just trying out the game and maybe you're a little rushed because you can only get together for 3 hours every 2 weeks, there's things that you can kind of tick off and skip. But
You've got
I mean,
a good group if you consider that rushed.
well, and I mean, if you're able to sit down and have kind of lengthy sort of discussions, and lengthy character build up and stuff like that, if that is something that your group wants to do, if they feel like doing it, if you're seeing them doing it and you want to encourage it, then I think incorporating that travel section is really useful.
Yeah, cool. We'll go with Nathan. The travel. It's kind of a moving location, I suppose.
That's exactly kind of where I was going with it. Is I'll use it as in movie terms like an establishing shot. So, like you said, you often start on the castle. You're in a city, and then if you're traveling out, you might be describing, how is this different? What are you seeing here? What time of year is it? Are they running into snow? Are they running across small villages? Giving them that idea of what they're going into, so you don't have to keep going back when you're describing the town and being like, remember it's winter, it's this. And I like the player interaction too. It's a good chance for convention games for people to have a very short scene that shows off their character of the vagabond stealing from the cab driver or something like that.
Cool. Ahimsa?
I think Nathan makes a good point. It's nice to establish the setting there, and I think it's good to. And on the other hand, or on that same hand, it's also good to establish the sort of urban versus rural. That's often the contrast there. But personally, I almost never have the travel part of the adventure, and for me, it's like I think the players are going to faff about enough without me starting the first half hour. Not that important stuff anyway. So I'm just going to start them where they need to be, and then we could play from there. That's how I usually do it.
Yeah. And final thoughts, Tom.
Done. I think Nathan described very eloquently almost everything I wanted to say about this topic. It's awesome to have the opportunity to introduce each character in a moment of competence and something what they would usually do, and it's brief, and at the same time, I really like the journey as a tool to set up themes and to set up the location which we are now traveling to, because it's also a journey for the players. And I like it to have an opportunity for everyone to act in this journey and have a good arrival at the place.
Yeah. I think as we said, we've all said here. You've all said here. It's a place for the players to really kind of define their character in a more social kind of situation, rather than if you start in the castle, you're off doing your research, you're questioning people. But also, as a side note, I tend to run pre-league games, especially as a collaborative view. A lot of the other games say this is a collaborative world-building experience. You can use the journey and have the characters and the players describe the landscape. Let them become part of it. Let them build it. That's something else. So let's get back to creepy. Again, kind of going slightly off here. What does creepy mean? So we'll come to that. What does creepy actually mean? What do we mean by this when we say, yeah, we're going to make a creepy location? The game is creepy. It's weird. It's horror. It's disturbing. What do we mean by creepy? We'll actually start with Tom this time. We'll actually
Ask the non-native speaker. Brilliant.
So, Tom,
Uh,
what is creepy but without looking at a dictionary?
we, I saw glimpses of this conversation in our group chat before, and I was like, well, I am very eager to learn the differences, and I want to know. So,
So, what's your opinion? Now you've seen a little bit of the conversation. What do you? What is your first thoughts on what creepy is?
unsettling. The term cozy horror is used a lot within the last 3 days, and I really like it. Compared to people who are running Cult and Call of Cthulhu and stuff like this, I am very much more in the comfort horror zone. Some people would maybe argue that I don't, that I am not running horror, and that's probably fine. But the stories that I tell with my players are often unsettling. They are disturbing to a degree, and often they are powered by dread. The fear that something is coming and there is like a maelstrom drawing everything down. And this might be something that I would try to evoke over the course of a mystery. And locations are very important to get this effect. And since we're going to talk how to achieve creepy later, I'm going to stop at this point.
Yeah. I will disagree with anybody who says you don't run horror. Having been in many of your games and seen many of your things, you do horror very well. It's just, it's not visceral gore horror. It's more psychological, personal horror. So I will fight anybody who says that against you, Tom. Let's go with Ahimsa. What does creepy mean to you?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna echo Tom here a little bit. I think the term I was thinking is maybe delightfully scary. It's not terrifying. It's kind of like, ooh, creepy. It's that thrill of like that is a little scary. It's that level of scary that's the level that I want, right? Like it's not the jump scare of the movie. It's more like Michael Myers just standing there looking at you, and you just feel that visceral thrill, right? So I think creepy is fun. It's delightful. It's just scary. It's a roller coaster in a way. It's not the gore. It's not maybe the eldritch horrors.
Yeah. These are games that are meant to be fun. We're not meant to properly disturb people, so I may have done that accidentally on times, but cool. Stephen, what is creepy to you?
Creepy, I want to say, is a cousin of eerie. We talked about eerie on a previous panel, where eerie is you expect something and it's not there, or you expect nothing and something is there. I would say creepy is that feeling, but it is a body feeling. It is it's just like Ahimsa was talking about with like, ooh, creepy, that sort of that physical sensation. It is something. It's something that it's not you're not quite at gore, but you're also not quite at eerie. You're sort of working your way up the track. You've got you have there's something and I think more it's probably on the lines of something present that, but it's a presence that gives your body a reaction. I think that's where creepy sits.
So it's kind of more of the physical feelings rather than
I would say that, yeah, it's less of a mental feeling. More, it grabs your body in a way. I think if I were to describe something as creepy, it would cause a physical sensation for me. That's where I'm at with it.
Okay, cool. We'll come to Tom and then we'll give final thoughts to Nathan because I see Tom has his question, sir.
Yeah. Question for Stephen. Would you say that for the feeling to be creepy, there has to be a component of invasiveness. Like, you can be in the presence of something, but I think horror and creepiness might start at the point where it becomes invasive, intruding on some on your personal space that you would say is protected until it is not anymore. Or is it something else?
I like where you're going with this. I feel like I want to kind of take the notion that yeah, no, it's kind of like the inverse of mild pleasure. Like, you know, if someone lovingly puts their hand on your thigh as opposed to something skeletal lovingly lays its hand on your thigh. The sensations are similar, but they're definitely coming from different perspectives. And yeah, I would say
It's
that
the hand
yeah,
on the shoulder in the toilet when there's no one there. I think
yeah,
is
in the invasiveness, I wouldn't say that full invasiveness, like body horror is not creepy. We've gone beyond creepy when we've reached body horror. But those first kind of delicate sensations, those things that, and they mostly come from within you, I think, more than anything. It's like your reaction to the hand on your shoulder in the toilet stall, and wait, there's no way that anybody could be standing there. That kind of, that initial kind of hot sensation or prickly sensation, that's what I think of when I think of creepy. Now, I mean, could there be
cool.
other definitions? Absolutely. But that's where I go with it.
That's
Thank
why
you.
we're here, to hear everybody's different ideas. Everyone will always have different ideas. Nathan, anything, final thoughts, expanding?
Yeah,
Can't
I
even remember
think
what the question was now.
expanding on that, because I agree completely with that, is it's not dread, right? Dread kind of stops. Like, that is I am pausing before I'm getting to this door because I know something awful is going to happen. Creepy, it, like you're saying, is that hand on your shoulder and you want to go, oh, what is that? There is the creepy room that you're like, I better go in there and look. It invites you in a little bit more than some of these other feelings.
It's kind of that first
Curiosity.
prickling of the fire.
Curiosity killed the
Yeah,
cat.
right. Right. It's just mild enough where you're like, I don't like it, but I gotta see where this is going.
Yeah, I
Sorry
like
to
that
step
idea.
into that.
No, go. No. Did you have something to say?
Well, I was just going to say that it's that first prickling of the fight or flight response.
Yeah.
Those initial
nice.
little pings that the
Mhm.
body sets off. It's not, you know, we talk about like dread or something like that. Like that's full blown. We're in a place. I mean, dread is kind of the fight or flight response, but you can't move and you're spiraling as a result of it. But it's not full panic. It's just those first little pings of the adrenaline setting, of the adrenaline starting to do its job.
I'm going to say one thing here. It doesn't always have to be a place either. People can be creepy. You've got your creepy clowns. That Tom, I think it was Tom who said something about personal space. Things that invade your personal space. So a clown on the street who comes up and just kind of puts their face really close to you. Someone who gets really close to you can be creepy because it's that invasiveness. But I've just talked about people and we're talking about location. So what then makes the location creepy? We've talked about what creepy is. It's this physical reaction we get. It's this invasiveness. It's a like intrigue, curiosity of something that might or might not be there. But how do you apply this to a location? How do you make a location then creepy? Because we've talked about how it affects us personally. But what location does that? Ahimsa, we'll start with you.
Sure. I think I have a quick two-part answer here, and one is just generally creepy, right? And I think it's fine to go to the tropes, the creepy forest or the isolated village, and all of those things are great. That's kind of what you signed up for, right? So nothing wrong with that. I think that what you want to think about is maybe like, can you work some uncanny valley in there, or can you just make something weird, like it's an isolated village, but there's no children? Oh, well, that's you know, something that the players know. There's something behind that, and they're not gonna like that something, but they don't know. But specifically for this game, I think it'd be interesting because I think in a horror game, or even a cozy horror game, one of the things is you can have a loss of agency, and you're not superheroes, you're not D&D characters, and I think it's creepy when your characters can't do the things they normally do. So I was thinking it'd be cool to have like some kind of cursed ground, and on that cursed ground, maybe no investigators can use their talents, or their talents do the opposite thing. So you could kind of have mechanical things there that the players are going to dislike that pretty intensely. Maybe it's not quite the same as creepy, but I think it could underpin some sort of set dressing that where you say it's creepy.
Yeah, I think definitely having the cursed ground affect the players, but them but maybe the cursed ground is not the graveyard. It's
Right.
somewhere else. It's not what they expect. So suddenly I can't do stuff. That is definitely creepy.
Right.
And Nathan, how do you make creepy locations? What?
Yeah, especially for Vesson, I think it's a case of feeling like you are trespassing. So it's that inner feeling of I'm out of my element and I'm going someplace where something doesn't want me. Because at the time, like the time period of this is very much of people in the cities are getting used to technology, they're feeling that, and then going and you get that folk horror aspect of you're returning to something you left. Maybe it's changed a bit since you've been there. Maybe it hasn't changed, but you don't belong anymore. Is just that kind of fish out of water feeling.
Yeah, yeah. I think the word there, trespassing, is quite important because a lot of the Vaesen have their locations and their specific grounds that they're connected to. You are trespassing on their territory.
Right.
So
And
yeah, I
it's
think
their
that's a good one.
place of power usually too, which makes it even better is you're going somewhere dangerous. You're not just going into a cave, you're going into a cave with a bear in it.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you think it's a bear, but oh my god, it's an actual troll. And it's kind of that build up.
Right.
Bit of self promotion here. I wrote a Vaesen in modern Vaesen, the setting that me and Tom wrote. I can't remember what it's called now. The Owlman of Cornwall. I can't remember the actual town of the village, and it's a Cornwall town, so it's a stupid name to pronounce. But this is something that very much is all about the location, and you are invading its location. So I love that idea of the trespassing on the location. We'll come to Tom because I know Tom will have some thoughts. There was a very deep thought moment I saw when Ahimsa was talking.
Oh, what a build up to a blank mind right now.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah. Maybe Stephen first because I just lost track of everything.
Okay, if you've just lost track, yeah, we'll come to Stephen and we'll come back to you. Stephen, haunted locations. Not haunted, creepy locations, sorry.
Locations. The two words that kind of popped up for me here and were safety and normalcy. If you take those two ideas, a creepy location is something that dismisses those ideas, and
Yeah.
it could be, and this is where I think like a creepy location can be a cozy location, because I mean you could be having, you know, you could be having tea in giant overstuffed armchairs and be incredibly comfortable and relaxed in front of a fire. And then suddenly it turns out that your host is some sort of spider monster that has just lured you into its lair. That sort of thing, that sense, that drop of safety, the safety drops out from under you. The normalcy drops out from under you. That's where creepy comes in. This is a place where you are not safe at any point. And you cannot expect anything normal. I mean, in the movies, the pizzicato violin strings are going. You know, that kind of sensation that you are just,
You're waiting for the
everything
Wilhelm scream.
well, yes, everything that has that you would normally take for granted, you're suddenly missing that.
Yeah.
It's that sensation. You know, I take for granted that I walk into a room and I sit in a chair and I am safe and I am comfortable. But suddenly, if I'm in a creepy location, then those things do not apply, even though I'm sitting in a chair.
Yeah.
No,
Cool.
I can't guarantee my safety. That would be creepy.
Well, yeah, we can actually come to that idea more in the next question, I think. So, if Tom has remembered what he was thinking, we'll come to Tom for final thoughts.
Something that comes to my mind sometimes and is often forgotten is that the core rules heavily imply that places are falling to destruction whilst the Vaesen are angry. That's what happens to the Witch Cat's Inn and Dance of Dreams, and probably in a few other areas, but it's something we easily forget that this is an implied rule of the setting. The places we investigate are already falling apart, and the Witch Cat's Inn was a pretty good inn 3 months prior the events of the scenario. And
Spoilers for everybody who's never played the Dance of Dreams.
we already established
Mild
everybody
spoiler.
everybody played it. It's it's the first
Great.
one you're going to play, and if I tell you, well, the inn looks like shit, it's the first thing you learn about the inn. So and that's a theme. Places change because of Vaesen activity, and it's a good thing to keep in mind. And I think the closer you come, the more you could increase this effect, or with the deeper you go into the countdown, you could increase the effect too.
Yeah, and that's a point that will kind of lead into the next questions to a certain extent. But
I think Nathan has thoughts.
Yeah. Go ahead.
If I can jump on that, that's part of what makes these mysteries and the countdown so good is there is a spiral aspect to this, right? Is the location begins to degrade, it angers the Vaesen, who makes it degrade, angers more and more, and good timelines lead to that point where you hit, and if the society members do nothing, something terrible is going to happen and completely change the face of this. And I think that's the most compelling for people, because sometimes you have like the fairies and the fae aspect, and that's more difficult because they're so timeless and there's not that necessarily loop circling the drain.
It also helps because with Vaesen, only so many people have that sight that lets them actually see what's going on. You need elements that are going to bring in your NPCs that don't have the sight. You need a way for them to feel that there's an impact happening.
We should have a panel on the site, actually. That's I think there's so much to say about this.
Well, yeah, what we can do is we can continue this idea, because one of the questions I actually have is how can you build tension with the creep? So we're talking here about, we obviously in the game, we have the countdown, we have that innately inbuilt within the game. But how can you use the creepy location over this countdown to build the tension of the mystery and the horror? And it also comes to another question, another related idea is, should it always be creepy? So two kind of questions here that you can take them in whatever way you want, but how can we use this creep and this countdown to build the tension in the game? And should the location always be creepy? Should we always use the creep to build the tension? So kind of tying them better together. I can see some deep thoughts in people thinking here. So if anybody wants to go first on this one, I'll let them while everyone else thinks. If anyone wants to jump on it first, if not, I will randomly choose. I'll get D4.
Sure, I'll jump in because I
Cool.
think this ties into a comment made previously, and I like the example of you're sitting around the fire and it's safe, and that's kind of
Mm.
where I go with the question of should it always be creepy. It's usually nice to have a location or two that is not. It is a safe spot that the players can sit at, and then I want to see how successful you can be at introducing the smallest detail possible that twists that location. And that's a good way to kind of hit that, like, this is spiraling as you're going and this location is no longer safe, right? As you're sipping tea and
Mhm.
you sip it up and there's a fly or something, like something, there's an eyeball. An eyeball's a little bit more dramatic maybe, but something along those lines of this location has changed because of inaction or activity of some kind.
Cool. Anybody else, or I will pick.
Well, I want to agree with Nathan there that
Yeah.
I mean part of the typical horror story structure is you do need those places where you can take a breath. Otherwise, the tension gets to be overwhelming. We can only be afraid for so long before the sensations that we naturally experience kind of give out and we get fatigue from it. I mean, I know this from kind of having an anxiety about flying, that you can only have that for so long. Once you're 3 hours into the air of a 6-hour flight, you're running out of steam.
Mm.
And so you need those spots to get comfortable again, and then you can jostle a second time. Then you can have that kind of that moment of discomfort, kind of suddenly that decay breaks through. And yeah, and then suddenly, I mean, for me again, I'm still thinking about safety, and I would say that, I mean, the creep is about degree of safety. As you count down, more and more things become unsafe, and more, it isn't just like the creepy inn. I might find, a fly in my pint, or I might find, a displaced hair or something like that that's unsettling. But then, it might get to a point where suddenly I'm putting my foot through the floorboards because they're moldy, because everything's moldy.
Yeah.
What's that smell that I haven't noticed for a while now, but it's suddenly kind of made its way in?
Yeah. I like that. You've almost kind of got this oscillating increase in
Yeah,
tensions, like it's
yeah, no,
safe,
you need that.
down. Yeah. Cool. Tom,
Yeah.
you have your hand up.
Yes.
I guess that's a hand up.
That's a hand up, because if I put it up, it disappears. Almost.
Creepy.
Not safe. Not safe hand. I realize we're right now, or I'm assuming we're right now talking about description and narration on part of the storyteller.
It could
And
be.
I was thinking about what techniques can we use to make a place creepy and to increase creepiness. And one of the ways that I think might work pretty good is getting a little bit into a meta conversation for a question or two. If we know that somebody disappeared or somebody died in the location that the characters are investigating right now, we could prompt questions as the GM how certain aspects of this place might have furthered the horrible thing that happened. Like, the characters are walking down a narrow hallway, and there is a thick oak door at the end of this hallway. And we could ask our players if they maybe have an idea how this door might have stopped somebody from fleeing. And immediately they are creating the scene in their head, and they get to put themselves into the dangerous situation that happened and now can happen again. And further down the line, after we implemented a few of these questions about this very narrow corridor, about this windowless room that they are entering, about the very thin wooden floorboards on the attic, that we get at least one of these things into action later on. And by this implementing that, all the horrible things that our players are thinking of now because we ask them these questions are all possible to happen. And this is a little bit a suggestive technique to next to, of course, narration and description.
It's almost collaborative horror tension building. So, like as I said before, a lot of 3D games are collaborative world building. So you're giving them the opportunity to build the world and build their own opinions and ideas of it. And maybe you bring those into the story later. So they've created the fear themselves.
Yes.
I like
and
that.
I would at least one time making sure I come back to one of these ideas, because then everything is possible.
Yeah.
And they're digging their own graves, they're creating their own nightmare.
Yeah,
This
cool.
reminded me a lot of Alison Rumfitt's particular kind of style of doing ghosts. I don't know if you're familiar. This is I will praise this book to the moon and back, because it's the best one I've read all year. It's called Tell Me I'm Worthless. Author is Alison Rumfitt. The way that she does horror and hauntings, it is the person being haunted has full foreknowledge of everything that the ghost is going to do to them before it gets, or when it gets a hold of them, even if it never does, even if it never touches them, even if they leave the room, they have full foreknowledge. They have literally lived the experience of being rended and ripped apart by this spirit.
Yeah.
And yes, I would say I'm definitely with Tom here. I mean, that's let them imagine what would be terrible for them to experience. What would let them, in their own minds, actually seeing beyond the door is probably worse for them than actually narrating and describing what's beyond the door.
Yeah, I think there's a good point here. I think there's actually a very good point that we can maybe delve into later if we've got time. Is the idea of forewarned or walking in blind? Because one of the things, obviously, in investing you can do is you can do research in the society, in wherever you've based them. They can go off and look in books and stuff, so they can become forewarned. Or you can walk into the building going, well, there's something creepy here, but we don't know what, we don't know anything about it. And we see this in horror movies as well. Sometimes the better horror movies are the ones where there is a forewarning, rather than just the slasher ones where someone just ends up going off and murdering people for no reason, in my personal opinion. But it's a whole definite difference in horror tropes. There's the forewarned, I know I'm going somewhere creepy, or there's the something just creepy suddenly happens in a place I don't know. But we'll give Ahimsa a chance to give their opinion or thoughts on this, and then we'll move on.
I do have thoughts, but I think Nathan had something to add as well.
Oh, I was just going to mention that both the kind of that setting scene, and then kind of letting players see the failure and then working back against it. You might enjoy reading the what are they carved from Brindlewood books. Those are two things that they suggest doing. Is it really is like a no? Let's explain how you die now. Well, do you want to turn back time and make sure that doesn't happen? Okay, we can do that. Or a little bit like the in the Mouth of Madness, right? Where you'll see stuff that the players or the actors in the case of this, like there's someone chained under a desk. The actors, the main characters, never see that. And in this case, like your players may never see that. But if you set that scene and play it out, it's really creepy. Like the players themselves will know,
Mm.
and the characters have no idea what they're going into.
I love the dichotomy of the players know, and then watching them struggle to play their characters, knowing this thing, and they go, "I can't talk about this thing that I actually know." And it's a wonderful thing to watch people's heads kind of deal with that. Cool. Ahimsa, comments.
Yeah, to your two-part question, I do agree with the others that I think creepy is only creepy when there's something not creepy, right? Things only really exist by contrast. So I think that makes perfect sense to maybe have some places that are almost sacrosanct and never creepy, just to highlight when you leave it how messed up things are. And I think what we've said about building tension is great. The other thing to keep in mind is like writing 101, use the five senses, like something's coming. Don't be afraid to do the footsteps. Or sometimes I give like a Vaesen like a signature scent. So it's like, oh, you could just smell a whiff of human or something strange, like something that shouldn't be there. And so I think using those things, using weather can be a character as well. Obviously, we think of winter or rains, but summer has those long twilights, and we literally call that the magic hour. So I think there's a lot of room for creepiness there as well.
Yeah, I definitely think weather can definitely add to it. Like I just spent a few days in New Orleans in the middle of summer. And I do not recommend it. As a Brit, I do not recommend going to New Orleans in the middle of July because it does it. We don't think of summer as creepy. We think of it as sunny, beach, happy times. But if you're not used to being in hot, humid weather, it drains you. It makes you physically tired, which then your brain starts acting in different ways and you start to see different things and experience the world in different ways. So I think that's a really good point actually to make. So the weather is also a character. I do tend to set Vaesen in autumn because I read a lot of Victorian Gothic horror and that's when it is. But do be aware that the location is important because also the weather is tied to the location. Cool. Right. 2 more questions and then we're going to do the fun bit. And I think these two can be combined together again into one. Because I know we did talk about this in the chat beforehand, and I know this is something that Tom is very, very excited to talk about, and I may have connections to this as well. But would a creepy location in an urban environment be different to a rural environment? Because obviously we have the castle is in the city, but also we did talk about modern versus 19th century. Because obviously the modern world is very much more city-based, is very much more urban, and the rural is a very different place. But let's start off with the first. Let's keep it in that actual Vaesen setting. Urban versus rural. What do we see as the differences in the creepy, or are they the same? Ahimsa, let's start with you. Maybe being in South Korea, obviously there's still very, very different ideas of city and rural, urban and rural, especially in the culture. I spent a lot of time in Asia, so let's start with you, Ahimsa. Any thoughts?
Sure, yeah, this is probably a case-by-case basis, but I think in general, isolation is scary. There is something about crowds, but I think with crowds you get into sort of plague or zombie, and that's sort of a different feeling. The sense like I'm alone or I'm not where I should be, it's actually dark at night. I kind of think rural is sort of objectively scarier than urban. Urban has its own dangers, but like our monkey brains, like we're not as afraid of the urban dangers. I think we're sort of maybe I don't know if it's social or what, but I just feel like most people are gonna find. I mean, forests at night are even as an adult are super spooky. You're camping and you hear, and it's just a squirrel going by, but like your brain is like, that's probably Bigfoot, right? Like I'm gonna die now. So to me, I think rural is kind of just scarier. Not to say there's not room for urban horror, but I think rural is kind of the peak.
I think there's a very good thing being a Brit that we can talk about with the idea of the forest and location. Different countries have different problems. Like I can walk around in England at night through a forest and know that I am safe because we don't have any creatures that will hunt us. It still doesn't stop it from being creepy and hearing those squirrels running around. But then you go to somewhere like Wisconsin and you walk around in the woods and then you suddenly hear a wildcat scream. Completely different. So locate, not just making the location creepy, the actual world that it is, where you are, looking at the nature, the fauna and the fauna, I think is can add to that. So yeah, forests, very different creepiness in very different parts of the world. Let's go to the Wisconsin then. Let's go to Nathan.
Yeah, I actually want to springboard off of that because I think that's an interesting the location of the location matters of
Mm.
one of the differences that comes to my mind between rural and urban is history. And at least in the US is a lot of the cities you don't get as much a sense of history. They're not old cities. Not really. Like if you look at England or something, you've got plenty of time like London, plenty of time back there that's just not present. So, yeah, here urban doesn't have that sense of history, but you might have a different kind of isolation of being alone in cramped spaces, that sort of feeling. Um, I don't know. I've never been to Sweden. Do you think that that is common, kind of in the more European things? Is there still that cramped feeling versus uh, more open urban? Does that make sense?
Yeah, we'll come to Tom with that one. I'll quickly make a comment about Sweden. Sweden is not cramped. I'll say that the big cities are still very open.
It does have the most narrow street in the world, though, in Stockholm, right? That's that one where you can like
you can barely fit down it, but
yeah.
The street was made for me.
But I've spent a lot of time in Gothenburg, and Gothenburg is like just vast and open. Copenhagen is vast and open, but there are cities in Europe that are very cramped. But we'll let Tom kind of maybe come to that as the one who is actually in Europe at this time.
I'm living in a very nice area where I have a lot of space around me. But yeah, I think we have pretty cramped places here too. And I am totally with Nathan. There are certain feelings of isolation you can get, especially in an urban scenario where you know that just a wall away from you, there is another person. But in Germany, we have a lot of very thick walls, and they might not be able to hear your scream. They are just 50 centimeters away from you, and there's nothing that they can do to help you. And horrible things have happened on this very close vicinity to other people. And I think these are supposed to be safe spaces, and suddenly they aren't anymore, and we are back to creepy, and I think a few steps further at this point. And yeah, that is its very own kind of horror. I think something that in the traditional setting of Vaesen is very important to some creepy locations. It's the eldritch nature of nature, basically. Because you are playing people who are coming from Uppsala, and you have your headquarters in a massive stone building. And you can make it into a fortress, basically. You can incarcerate creatures down there that are too dangerous to be left in any other place. You have a bastion of knowledge if you're back home in Uppsala. As you venture out into the remote villages, where a lot of the people don't welcome you, you're entering a different world. And if you get to the home of a woodwife, or you enter the area where trolls are living, you're entering the world as it maybe once was. And I think it has a little bit like the nature of Gaia in Cult Divinity Lost. It is undisturbed and uncontrolled. Like the entire Baroque architecture and mindset back then was nature is chaos because it's the place where we have wars and we need our gigantic garden just to pose our control over nature. And in Vaesen, you are entering the uncontrollable. You're entering the realm of Vaesen. Sometimes, if you have a barn Nissa, then probably not, but because it is a culture Vaesen. But there are other more primal creatures that you encounter, and that's something very beautiful and scary because that is untamed land. These are untamed forces.
Yeah, I think that's a very key thing to remember about Vaesen is there is this. We're in the Industrial Revolution. There's this human move to try and control nature, and nature is fighting back with the Vaesen and things. Cool. Right, we'll come to Stephen for a last thing, and I have a challenge for you, Stephen. In this, we have not used this word much, even though everyone said at the beginning we're going to use it all the time. Liminal. Try and give the answer with liminal in it, because there's lots of things that have been specifically talked about with the city, which I instantly go liminal. But let's see if we can.
I think I can do this because what I was going to bring to this was the discussion of a particular author. It's Robert Aikman. When we talk about urban and rural, and I mean, a lot of people have talked about kind of already how the rural is creepy. I think the urban can be creepy, but I think and I think the urban can be a creepy location if you make the people part of the creepy and you make them part of the location. Because that's the thing, you have this mass of humanity. I mean, yes, they are kind of like you in that they are people and all of that, but I mean, if you're not associated with them or anything like that, if you walk into a bar and sit down at the bar and there are 20 random people that are carrying on with their lives, having conversations, they may as well be part of the wallpaper and the floor and the fixtures because they're just moving elements of scenery at that point. And what Aikman does is oftentimes just introduce a creep factor into what should be a normal, comfortable, urban, hospitable environment. The two stories that I'm thinking about this, of course, his best one, I believe, is called The Hospice, where a man's car breaks down. He ends up at a hotel. Everybody's it's early in the 20th century, so everybody's having dinner together, and he just slowly starts to realize that everybody around the table is wrong somehow. He doesn't know them as people. They're almost objects, but he can tell that they're wrong and that he is suddenly in a wrong place, and suddenly that sense of safety just gone. The Fetch is the other story of his that I really like. It's a little bit harder to find, but the experience there's one particular experience, the idea of a fetch, and I think a fetch would make a great Vaesen, especially in an urban environment, because the idea the fetch comes to your family whenever somebody is dying or about to die and takes them away. So if the fetch shows up, if you can see the fetch, you know that a family member or a loved one is about to kick off. And there's a scene where a gentleman is in kind of an early elevator, a glass elevator going down, and he sees in the opposite elevator of his building the fetch riding up toward his apartment where he's just left his wife. And it's horrific because he can see it, but he's stuck What the hell do I do? And I mean, yeah, you could be in that situation, and we could take that to like a 19th century situation where, you know, maybe it's London and it's the earliest institution, or the earliest kind of train infrastructure. We were talking about train stations the other night, and the idea that, okay, you've got a pile of people getting on a train, you've got a pile of people getting off the train, you're stuck, but you see your fetch go by the opposite direction, but you're being carried like a wave onto this train. And the sensation of, oh God, I just left my wife and kids alone, and there goes the family fetch. You know, what am I missing? That kind of, I think what you do to introduce the creep in an urban environment is you make people part of the scenery, crowds, groups of strangers, and you work from that. And so you wanted me to add kind of liminal, and what I've been talking about here is kind of those liminal spaces, those spaces where you're going one way and everybody else is going the other, spaces where everybody around you is a stranger. That, I would say, is, I mean, those are those liminal kind of spaces where you don't know, you have an expectation of what's going to happen, but your expectation can be easily thwarted.
Yeah. So
there's my best step.
No, I think that's great. I'm not going to ask the modern versus 19th century question, because I think we've covered a lot of the ideas here within that, especially with the urban idea. But if anyone wants to read more about, go ahead.
I add really quickly to the Aikman recommendation? Also, ringing the changes. It sort of fits the same criteria, and I think it's one of his very, very best. So if you're going to read Aikman, I think also check out Ringing the Changes. It's really excellent.
No, cool. Lots of good book recommendations in this chat. I was quickly going to just plug something. If you want to read more about modern settings and liminal spaces and how you might use cities, there is a supplement out there that me and Tom did work on called Modern Vesen. So do go check that out. So we won't answer that question now because you can read it. So we've got about 20-25 minutes left, including wrap up. So what I thought might be good to do is we spent a lot of time talking about the creepy locations and the game and stuff. Why don't we actually just create a location? Why we've got all these amazing ideas. We've talked for nearly an hour and a half on creepy locations and what they are and how we can do this. Let's actually create one for people. So if there's people who are watching who have never played Vesen, don't know how to create a game or run a game or create a location, let's do that right now. I have no plan or structure over this, and I think that's going to be interesting because we all have very different ideas. But we're going to stick within the core book. Okay, let's not go beyond that. Just let's keep it nice and simple. We're going to stick in Sweden, around the Uppsala area. Let's create a creepy location. Okay? So, first things first. What is it going to be? Is it going to be a church? Is it going to be a pub? Is it going to be someone's house? Is it going to be a village? Is it going to be a forest? Where do we want this creepy location to be? Is it going to be in Uppsala itself?
I have a suggestion for something kind of a universal, if nobody minds. I'd just like to put this out there. Feel free to say no.
Universal is probably easy. Better.
Yeah, no, something that people can adapt to different places. I'm just thinking about this. I know we want to stick with Sweden, with Uppsala, but what about let's start with a farm.
Okay.
I think a farm gives us a lot of opportunity because it has some urban in that it has buildings. It also has a lot of rural, and it's something that that you can find everywhere in the 19th century. Everywhere has to have, small farms. I mean, they are at that point still kind of the backbone of civilization. What's allowing the cities and the factories to exist.
I'll bring in a little bit extra on that. It's like something I talked about or mentioned in the occult one was this is the Industrial Revolution. So we've still got our small creepy farms, small local farms, not creepy, small local farms, and we're getting industrialized farming. This is becoming a thing. So you've got this instant way to expand the idea. So I like that. Does everyone think we can build a creepy farm?
Stephen?
Yeah, I was thinking like a family farm.
Okay.
Okay.
As opposed to like an
So,
industrial. I mean, it might be
yeah.
feeling the encroachment of the industrial farming.
Yeah, it was
But-
just kind of it's a thing that you can scale up. So we'll stick with a family small farm, but it's something because of the time period we can also then make bigger if we need to. Cool. So what does a farm include then? What do we want to include in this farm? Nathan, what would we put in this farm?
Pretty easy. You gotta have the house. Gotta have a barn. Might have a silo if they've got fields for it.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to have some kind of animals, depending on, might be pigs, might be cows, might be, I don't know if Sweden has other various farm animals that they might use, ducks, but who knows? Um, if you have that sort of thing, you might want to have a lake and a river next to it as well for opportunities. A lot of it kind of depends on what vessel you want to have near it. If you have a brook horse, you should probably have a brook, for example.
Yeah. So again, tying it to the game. So what mystery are you going to do? If it's a farm, like when we want to do mermaids, well, then it's going to have to be a farm on the coast. So again, it's that location of the location. I think. I'm going to bring a question up out of that that either Tom or Ahimsa can have. Does it have to have animals? Not all farms are livestock farms.
They aren't, but why don't we have some? I mean, this. I was thinking chickens or geese. Maybe we want to go with
geese are horrible.
geese. And I was thinking
We have someone in
should,
Canada here. They know all about geese.
we should maybe start with the things that imply safety. Like there is a large number of living creatures around here with the family and their servants and a lot of geese. And in Roman times, geese had also a protective task, like they alert if there are any intruders. So this is
that is what witches used to fly as well.
oh, interesting.
In like 16th, 17th century England, there were geese markets, and you would have farmers would march their geese for hundreds of miles across the country to get to markets to sell them. So I think geese is a good one. And yes, they are very noisy, and they do let you know when things are around, which they don't like, which is generally everything.
And geese, I like geese because as an egg-laying species, they give you an opportunity to do basically, I mean, the something is wrong with the farm trope, and that can be identified through creepy eggs. Maybe they are laying eggs that don't belong to the right species. Maybe maybe things hatching out of them are more serpentine and lizard-like than recently. Maybe this is a reason for the family to panic, for the servants to run off, for somebody to seek help from someone in the city who belongs to this society that deals with these sort of things.
Yeah,
maybe this
definitely.
is a story that can get back to the society somehow. That there are that the geese on this particular farm have been laying eggs that result in all sorts of strange, abominable births.
I can definitely see the Call of Cthulhu influence right there.
I'm sorry, I can't help it.
No, it's
actually,
fine. I'm just remembering. I think it was I got asked to
Actually,
review.
that's Matthew Bartlett's
Creepy
doing,
Wolf.
I would say.
Yeah.
That's my he's another favorite of mine. If you've never read him, he's if you want to see some horrible surrealist stuff, Matthew Bartlett and his Gateways to Abomination is a really good one. But I'm getting off topic. Let's
That's fine. That's fine.
That's my contribution. Geese are having abominable births through abominable egg laying.
So we've got a farm. We've got animals. Talked about location. where we might situate it. But and we've talked a little bit there just about one way that we can start the creep. A farm, to me, I grew up in the countryside in England. I spent a lot of time messing around in the fields and messing around in barns and stuff. Obviously, in horror movies, farms are very much a thing because of that isolation that they have, especially in American horror, in Midwestern horror. They're very, very isolated. Let's not take that American Jeepers Creepers idea, or whatever it is, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's the one I was actually thinking of. That's in the band. How can we in Uppsala, in that region, add a creep to what's probably a very nice, calm, gentle, serene area? What other things other than creepy eggs and creepy geese babies? What could we maybe do to the buildings? Could there be something that could happen over time within the buildings themselves? So I don't want this to be let's create a scenario. I want this to be specifically the location. What things can we add to this location that could be creepy? If anybody has any ideas. And there's some really nice comments about places in the chat. I am seeing them. I am reading them. These are different places because I think Blues Cats makes a good one, which I think we could bring in about Bronze Age burial mounds. So yeah, let's rather than say what can make the building creepy, how can we use the Bronze Age burial mounds then with the farm and make it creepy?
I'm unfamiliar with these burial mounds. What's the high level of them?
Depending on the location that you are, depending on the country you're in, they're either just very small little hillocks because of erosion and stuff and farming, or they can be quite large. So that in England and Ireland and Scotland, you get some quite big, strange structures, Iron Age forts and things that are built on top of burial mounds, and they just think of Lord of the Rings, even though it wasn't in the movie, but in the book, those kind of things.
I understand Bronze Age. I was not hearing.
Sorry, Stephen?
I mean, the
Gamla Uppsala in Sweden, and it kind of has these three uniform mounds.
Mm.
Yeah. It has that. It's a very cool picture. You could definitely, somebody's parcel could definitely include something like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, and again, kind of in that industrial vein, maybe the family recently purchased the land next door or something like that. It's got these mounds on it, but they need to try to till that. They need to try to knock them down in order to create more fields.
Yeah.
I think we're creating a scenario now more than a location. And also I've contributed a lot, so I will stop for the moment. I will hold my tongue.
Just that muddy field, though, with stuff in it where you cleared it out, but it's not growing. That's pretty creepy.
Yeah, Tom.
First, Ahimsa wanted to chime in earlier.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, it was farmers who found the terracotta army, for instance, right? Like you can dig up anything in a farm.
Yeah.
I'd like to bring a little bit from the mound into our farm, because you have to know gonna call it the master bedroom. It is basically the bedroom of the couple who is currently running the farm. It has been for over 200 years by this point, and they have like this very, very nicely crafted bed, and it actually has some large poles on the end, on the corners of the bed, and there's some woodwork carved into these poles, and it has been there since this bed entered this room, and it was always seen as a blessing to the house. but just after the land next door was purchased, there's a crack building up in one of these poles, and it's running through a very intricate sigil or a rune that has been sitting there since the beginning.
So we've now come to the full circle where we've gone. The location of the location is important, but a location within that location. So we've got location, location, location. But yeah, I think that's a great idea. So that actually made me think of now. I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly. I've not been in England for quite some time, but in Manchester, actually within the city, almost within the city centre, there is a very old building. Again, I forgot the name of it. And I know there is someone who's probably going to be shouting at me very, very loudly after this about forgetting this, if they're watching. It's an old, very old building that's been there since Roman times, and it's got a lot of history. It's quite famous for a ghost, a lady in grey story. But there's a four-poster bed in the building that is said to be haunted. So as soon as Tom starts talking about this bed, I'm like, this is very much a thing that you can bring in. It's a location within a location that can bring in creep. Like, your bed is meant to be your safe place. This is meant to be where you go at night. It is your comfort place. It is your cozy place. It's not meant to be scary. And then you add in these small little changes that can do this. I talked in the occult thing about the clothes on the chair at the end of the bed. So again, you're messing with those safe places, which we've talked about a lot today as well. Yeah, Tom?
I also tried to bring some past to this building at the same time, try to start a background story of our character, the creation. And I think maybe we get one or two other ideas like this to have
there was a panel, if I'm remembering, I've not caught up from yesterday, on the history, bringing history, like real history, into the game, because even though this is a historical setting, depending upon your timeline views of the world, whether you're European or American, the world, like, humans have existed for a long time. So we've talked about Bronze Age mounds. These are very much a thing that occur across Europe. Are there any kind of other historical things that we might be able to do? Like, obviously, the long-term history of Europe is centuries. Is there anything else that might happen? I do have a specific idea that I can bring in, but I'll let you guys think on it. Any thoughts?
I have a thought, but I want somebody else to go.
All right, so that barrow mound was built on top of Neolithic standing stones, so it goes back even further than we think. And because of the crush against these big farms, big agriculture, this mom and pop farmer, they stole some of the gold out of there because they're worried that they're going to lose their family farm. And unfortunately, since they've taken that gold in, that's when the trouble's gone. But they're not going to admit it because, well, they're reluctant to admit it, right? Because they know it's thieving and it's wrong. But they're kind of at an existential crisis right now, and they're trying to learn about maybe these Neolithic graphs that they're finding, and it's really interesting. But one of the stones has a rune very similar to the one that's carved beneath their bed. So what's the connection there?
You've just made me remember of a recent folk horror movie I watched. It's set in Yorkshire. I can't remember the name of it. That does basically the same thing. They go off into the Yorkshire moors, and there are missing people. And without spoiling anything, there are Neolithic sites in there. And yeah, there's something we talked about in the occult panel. It's the unknown. Neolithic history. We don't know anything about it. So adding in the creep of, we know there's something there, but we just have no idea what it is, suddenly becomes creepy. And in Europe, you can quite easily dredge up a field and there'll be stones there. It's like, why the hell are there these big stones in my field? So yeah, we've got about 5 minutes left. So any other things we want to quickly add to this idea? I know, Stephen, you said you had a quick idea.
I did. I'm actually going to posit something else though, just based because
Okay.
I think I think Ahimsa has a great idea there, and I think what you bring in is the opportunity because if there are if there's shared symbols on the Neolithic stones and the
Mm,
bedpost, you have an opportunity there for sympathetic magic for
yes.
this very kind of James Fraser notion of, you have a big version of something and a little version of something, and maybe those stones are preventing something from rising up, but because the family, they turned over the grave, dug out whatever treasures they could find from it, they have given it an opportunity to come out of their bedpost instead.
Yeah. That's a cool idea. That actually brings me to another idea, which is very, very popular, maybe a little bit before. So if we go a little bit earlier into history, so Tom's idea of an old house with creepy beds is apotropaic magic. I think I've said that wrong, but it's the carving of sigils on doorways and bedposts. This idea of protection. It's small local protective magic. You can bring that into there. So there are nails hammered into the window frame and stuff like that. So these are the small details. Tom's getting
As
excited there.
as is the new reinforced door and
Yeah,
the window shutters that are very sturdy. And all of this mundane and occult protection is actually keeping the danger inside and not out.
yeah.
And welcome to your personal nightmare, dear investigators and farmers family. This is gonna go bad for you.
That's a really cool idea. Like you get the geese are laying creepy eggs for some reason, so you start protecting your house, but you've already brought one of the creepy eggs into the house. It now can't get out. So well done. I think that's a great idea. Right. Let's just do some final thoughts then on locations as general. So we've had some fun here with a creepy farm, and I'm sure that's generated some wonderful storytelling ideas. I know I certainly got some more, and there's been some nice chat going on in the chat about other things around Uppsala that might be interesting. So go read those. But final thoughts on creepy locations. Let's kind of say, what's one thing that you will take away from this chat about a creepy location? What's a new idea that has been given to you during this? Let's start with Nathan.
Just as we're talking through it, is just the variety of locations that we're talking about is trying something new and researching new different locations that I may not have thought of as creepy.
Hmm?
I think someone mentioned a boat, and that was in the chat, and it was
Yeah,
another kind of highlighting what was said here of like, oh yeah, that's a pretty scary spot.
yeah. It's that isolation thing again.
Hmm.
You're yeah, boats, and also just deep water. Deep water is a very visceral
Yeah.
fear of mine. Um, cool. Himson, any final thoughts or something new that you've picked up from this chat?
Oh, I think like what we just did here, like maybe probably a lot of adventures would be better if we started off just kind of spitballing with a couple other people. Like it's pretty easy to, because it's easy to start with big ideas, but the question is how do you narrow them down to like something functional? But I
Mm,
think it's really cool to maybe have this collaborative process, and then maybe each of us writes our own, and it's gonna go different ways. But it's really cool to have that sort of collective genesis together. I think that's pretty neat.
yeah, yeah. I think what has really helped me with writing is actually working quite a lot with Tom. We don't always agree on things, and we're quite vocal when we don't agree. But it makes our stories better if we don't always agree. Um, and we disagree in a friendly manner. Like Tom's one of my best friends, love him to pieces. Just wish I was in the same. It wasn't the other side of the pond. I moved away. It was my fault. So yeah, collaborations definitely help you build ideas and get you new things and allow you to think in different ways. Yeah, Stephen, anything you've specifically picked up on during this chat?
I think really being the one who's probably the most new to Vaesen out of this group, and probably that what I've picked up on is the idea of the creep as it relates to location. And I also think that I'm going to steal that for a couple of other projects that I'm working on at the moment with involving other games. I think that there is room to play with that trope and to bring it to other horror settings. So yeah, I'm going to take my ideas and run. That's my plan.
Good. As long as we can promote ideas, it doesn't matter what game system is. One of the questions we were going to talk about is the difference between Vaesen and other games, but lack of time. Cool. Tom, anything that has specifically stood out or excited you today?
I think the one word that stuck out to me the most is safety. And how to endanger it, how to reverse it, how to corrupt it. That's, I think, the brightest burning idea that's in my head right now. And yeah.
Cool. Brilliant. I really enjoyed this. So great fun. We'll just do now a quick roundup of who you are, where people can find you, and that lot, and then we'll sign off. We'll do this quickly because we're actually at time limit. And we'll go with Tom, and we'll go the opposite route. So Tom, who are you? Where people find you and things?
Hi, I'm Tom Moore. I am a professional GM over at startplaying.games. It's written the way that you can see at the thumbnail for this video, or just TOM and then MURR. I am also a community content creator for Vaesen. I've written Modern Vaesen together with David, and I am having 2 articles in the most recent Vaesen, and I am doing games translation from English to German. And yeah, I love writing. I love banging my head of ideas, and yeah, you can book me.
Brilliant. Stephen.
Well, I'm Stephen Wall. I am responsible for Delapore Media, the blog and imprint. It's DELAPORE Media. You can find me under that name on Twitter, on Blue Sky, Facebook, I believe, as well. And yeah, and beyond that, new product upcoming. Somebody Think of the Children. Released
Somebody think of the children.
We're due to release in October, so be looking for it.
Brilliant. Ahimsa.
Yeah, I'm Ahimsa. I kind of miss Google Plus, so now I am on Blue Sky as well, but it's it's not what you want it to be. I do have a adventure published. It's like a Silk Road, Central Asian, and this con I also play tested one that involves like Mary Shelley and some plague and maybe Jason and the Argonauts. I don't know. We'll see if that stays in or not. So that's my next project that will be coming out.
Cool. And Nathan.
All right, I'm Nathan. Check out the RPG Reanimators on Spotify and YouTube. Spotify has a lot more discussions. YouTube has a lot more actual plays and little odd things like Acquisition Disorder, where you can see me talk about all the games I've bought and haven't had the time to play, which is a infinite supply.
Yeah. This is why I don't do RPG reviews, because then I'd buy more and never actually do anything. Cool. Brilliant. And yeah, I am David. I've been the moderator. You can find me as the drunken storyteller in various places. And yes, I agree. Blue Sky is really not what I want it to be. I find a little bit more fun on Threads, but again, not great. Social media has died. I'm also part of Darker Days Radio, so if you want to go and listen about creepy horror RPGs, go over there, find me there. And just plug a thing that has just been released for me on Friday. Scion, the RPG from Onyx Path Publishing, community content called Scion Pride, where we have looked at a lot of the more queer aspects of old religions and maybe gayed up a few gods that have stories that relate to them, but we've just brought it out a little bit. So if you're interested in looking at some queer history and gods and how to use that in your Scion games, go check that out. It's released on community content for Drive Through RPG, Scion Pride. So go check that out. And I've got a load more Vaesen stuff that I'm working on, more Mysteries of East Anglia, which I was meant to do this weekend but didn't. So life got away from me. So yeah, cool. Go check all those out. Go check everybody else out. And I will see you in the next panel in a couple of hours because I'll be there as well. So I hope everybody enjoyed that. And yeah, Stephen, you're there as well, aren't you? Yeah, cool. Yeah, thank you. So we'll speak to you all later and hope you enjoyed, everyone. Bye.
Bye.